Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The FCC has announced the next broadband data collection filing window. Be right back with the details. Hey there everyone, Rick Uzzi here with Zcorum. Thanks for joining me for Broadband Deployment News. So the FCC has announced the next filing window, which we all pretty much knew what it was going to be, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. You probably are if you're a broadband provider. If you're not, hopefully somebody in your organization is that would be responsible for this. But there are also some new broadband operators that have launched service since the last filing window closed, or certainly since the last one was effective as of the data to be collected. So it's very possible there's some new operators out there that are going to be like, what? Or maybe they know they need to do this, and this is a good reminder for them. So I did want to cover this real quick. So you see here, I've linked to this in the video description. This is the FCC public notice. Broadband Data Task Force announces opening of broadband data collection filing window and release of updated broadband serviceable location fabric. So if you are unfamiliar to this, maybe you're a broadband operator, but this is not kind of what you do, and you just want to maybe check on it, or if you're a new operator. So basically, we all pretty much familiar with the new FCC broadband national broadband map. Well, that is based on a couple of different things. It's based on something called the broadband serviceable location fabric, or the fabric, which is the base data that is supposed to show every single location in the United States that is broadband serviceable, or should be broadband serviceable, meaning that it is a structure on a piece of property that should have access to broadband. Whether it does or not, that's a separate question. But it is a location, whether it's a house, in a residential neighborhood, or a farm, or an apartment building, an apartment unit in an apartment building, or certainly the apartment building. These are locations that are marked on this fabric, specifically with a location ID that says this particular point, this roof line, is supposed to get broadband service. So that's the data. And then broadband service providers are supposed to, twice a year, and this started, I guess, almost 2 years ago. Yeah, maybe 2 years ago. They are then to upload into that fabric the locations where they actually provide service, not where they can provide service, not where they do provide, where they have customers. It's more than that. It's not just where they have customers. It's any one of those broadband serviceable locations where they actually can provide service with a standard installation of like less than 10 days. In other words, somebody calls, and assuming nothing goes wrong with broken trucks and people out sick, you could go install that service within 10 days or so. In other words, you don't need to extend your plant in order to be able to reach somebody. You provide service there, and if somebody wants it, you can provide it to them within, let's say, 10 days. So anywhere that you can provide service, you then, as a broadband operator, need to upload that information into the fabric, along with some specifics about the maximum advertised speed offered at that location. What kind of service is it? Is it fiber to the home? Is it cable? Is it fixed wireless? Whether your latency is less than 100 milliseconds round trip. And if it's an apartment building, how many units there are, those kinds of things that you need to upload into that. And then that data, the fabric data, and then overlaid on top of that, the broadband service provider data is then turned into the FCC national broadband map. And again, broadband operators are supposed to do this now twice a year. And the dates have been pretty much the same. So here we are, at the beginning of January, and they're announcing that the next window is opening. So you see here, the broadband data collection filing window for submitting broadband availability and other data as of December 31st, 2023, will open on January 2nd, 2024. So if you start providing service sometime after the 31st, in other words, let's say you're set to launch service in an area on January 15th, that will not count. So you're not going to count that as an area that you're serving, because this is data as of December 31st, 2023. And as I said, there could be providers that have gotten in service after the last period, and that was the end of June, I believe. So, if you started providing service after the end of June, because the last filing window, I think, opened in July. So if you were not providing service by June 30th and you started providing service sometime after that as a new service provider, then this is going to be your initial filing. You've never done this before then. So you would now need to be doing that because this is data basically as of December 31st. And if you didn't file before because you hadn't had service by, let's say, June 30th last year, this will be brand new to you. So you can see here, this, again, let's see, what is it? This will be December 2023 update, version 4 of the Broadband Service Location Fabric will be available to existing Fabric licensees starting on December 27th, 2023. So starting tomorrow, basically, you will have access to the Fabric. You won't start submitting or uploading anything until the 2nd of January, it sounds like. So beginning January 2nd, 2024, facilities-based broadband service providers may begin submitting data into the BDC system that identifies where they made mass market broadband internet access service available, again, as of December 31st, 2023. Such entities and providers of fixed voice services must also submit their December 31, 2023 subscription data required under Form 477 into the BDC system. So prior to the BDC system and doing these filings that are going down to an address level granularity, we had the Form 477 data, which was for broadband services. You just stated, yes, in this census block, we have at least one subscriber that can get broadband, and here's the maximum speed they can get. It didn't matter if there were, if you only had 10% of that census block covered, the FCC considered that census block covered with broadband. But now we have the map that goes down to the address level, so that's been an improvement. But that was the 477 process. But now you can file your 477 data in the BDC system, and you, in addition to providing where you can provide service in, let's say, a standard installation, you also have to provide the actual subscriber data. So who actually has your services in that? That's part of the 477 requirement. So that also gets filed, as they're saying here. And that is, as it mentions here, providers of fixed voice services as well have to do that. All availability and subscription data must be submitted no later than March 1st, 2024. So that's basically the deadline. And you do not, as they'll recommend in here, you don't want to wait till the last minute on this. You want to make sure you get it in and make sure everything's right. A recorded webinar demonstrating how to use the BD system is available at the Education tab, and then they've got a link down here you can check out if you want to look at that. By the way, I also, in the description of this video, linked to a blog post that I did a while back, I guess a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever all this kind of got started and the BDC process was new and people didn't know what to do. I did a blog post on that, and I have several links in there to some help kind of resources at the FCC where you can go check that out as well. So there's some links here that you can look at, but you also might want to read that blog post that I did right there. So that's linked in the description. So you can see here they've got this, and then it says related video tutorials and help articles are available at the BDC Help Center right there. And I'm sure I linked to that in my blog post as well. Information about categories of the broadband providers that must file availability data, the types of entities that may submit verified data, and what data must be filed can be found right there. That's the filer's link right there. Providers who are already licensees of the Fabric and other Fabric licensees, including state, local, and tribal government and other third-party entities, will receive an email from CostQuest, the FCC's Fabric contractor, providing them with access to the December 2023 Fabric data. Entities that have not yet entered into a license agreement with CostQuest may do so by following the instructions for obtaining access to the Fabric at the BDC Help Center. So again, that would be new operators that haven't filed before. If you started providing services sometime after June 30th last year, then you're going to have to go through this process and you need to get access to the Fabric. If you already had gotten access to the Fabric, sounds like you're going to get just an email with the next one, or you'll receive an email with how to get that next Fabric. And this is, it's not just broadband operators you see here, it's tribal entities, it's community organizations, anybody that's been looking at the Fabric that has a license for it, and they might be looking for it for challenging different things, that kind of activity, they're going to be getting that as well. The new version of the Fabric incorporates data from updated data sources and other improvement efforts conducted by the FCC and CostQuest, and the results of Fabric challenges submitted by the state, tribal, and local governments, broadband service providers, and the public to the National Broadband Map. So again, this has been kind of a living thing, especially as it's got started, because when it got started, we went from, again, a scenario where we were just reporting whether any location within a census block had broadband to one where we were reporting every single serviceable location in the country and whether or not it had broadband. And that was a big undertaking. Even just identifying every single location that should have broadband was a huge undertaking. And that's where there were lots of errors, obviously, because we were trying to figure out what structure on what piece of property should have broadband. That wasn't so difficult in a residential neighborhood where you got houses all next to each other, but as you got further out, further out there, and you're talking about rural areas and farms and those kinds of things. Which structure is supposed to get broadband? What about these places where you've got very rural houses in the woods? You can't hardly see them if you're looking at satellite imagery. That was all very difficult. Apartment buildings, do we have a correct count on units? Community anchor institutions, do we know which ones should be getting broadband? In other words, they're supposed to be getting broadband. There was a big controversy about that because it was assumed that they should have broadband through some other method of broadband and not through a mass market provider that might be in the area, and that's usually not the case. So anyway, big undertaking, and a lot of this has been worked out over time, and this next fabric is going to be even better. But there are going to be changes regardless, even as we get the fabric. If we get the fabric perfect at any one point, meaning every single broadband serviceable location is in the correct spot, and everything looks good, then you've got new neighborhoods popping up, right? So you got new people coming in to live into new homes that are built, and all that's going to have to be updated on an ongoing basis. This is done twice a year. And then hopefully broadband service providers that have been through this in a few iterations, it's getting easier for them to upload their data and to sync it up with the FCC data. That was the other hard part, was that broadband service providers, they've got their billing data. They know where they provide service, but who they're providing service to, but not necessarily every single location they could provide service. Now they probably know every single location they can provide service, but they also needed to match those, what would be a physical address that they have in their system, with a location ID on the FCC data. So all of that was very difficult. Hopefully that's a little bit easier now as service providers have been through this a couple of times. Those that were doing this. For the new guys, you need to figure it out again. So you're going to be going through that process. We encourage filers to submit their December 31, 2023 availability data as early as possible in the filing window. This will give filers an opportunity to address any problems with their data identified by the BD system in time to make any necessary corrections in advance of the March 1, 2024 deadline. And I do anticipate some people that have been through this before will forget some things, and maybe they'll go, oh yeah, we need to upload that stuff again. And maybe they only upload where they have actual customers and not everywhere they can provide service. That was a common mistake in the early going. It's like if you looked at their territory on the FCC map, it showed only where they had customers and not everywhere they could cover. So hopefully people will get this going and not make similar mistakes in the future. But you know how it is when you have new people come in and they're tasked with doing something. So we'll see how it goes, but it should be getting better each time as we go through this. And then here, finally, failure to timely file required data in the new BD system may lead to enforcement action and/or penalties as set forth in the Communications Act and other applicable laws. And again, in the early rounds of this, especially the first time around, I did a survey of internet service providers that answered a survey that I sent out to everybody that we had in our database that was an ISP. And we had a good number that as of the last week had not filed yet. And they had, some of it was just, they just didn't know, or they put it off because it's like, oh, we'll get to this. And in some cases, it was because the fabric wasn't right. And, they were trying to figure that out. A lot of it was data matching, again, taking the FCC location IDs and trying to figure out what they were compared to the addresses, the physical addresses they had, and matching that all up. So lots of problems in the early going. So I think there was probably some grace given there, some leeway on some of these penalties as service providers were making, if it was shown that they were making a good faith effort to get that stuff in. But I think the FCC is going to be less and less tolerant of people not filing this as we move along here, as there's been some history with this, with, again, the possible exception of new operators that come in, and again, it's brand new to them, so they're going to be going through this process and figuring it out. So, but do be aware that you want to be aware that you do have the risk of fines here and other kind of enforcement action if you lapse on that. So don't do that. And as I mentioned, I've got a link to this blog post that I did about various help resources. Again, some of them are mentioned in that public notice, but there may be some other things in here that can help, including this thing on, some FCC on text matching if you're having to match those location IDs. But I think it's been determined the best way to do that. I mean, you can do it through an Excel spreadsheet and try to match the text, but also another way to do it would be to have polygons and try to match your service area that way versus trying to have a text-based kind of thing. So there's various things you can do there. So Anyway, here we go. So it's this it's a new year and a new filing. And again, this will be the 1st of March is when the deadline is in. And then by May, sometime in the month of May, the new map will come out. So they'll take all of that data, the new fabric, and all of the overlaid provider information on top of that. They'll come out with a new map in May. And then I think as of the next filing window will be data as of June 30th, most likely. And then the next filing window then will be July through roughly September. And so that's just going to continue on. And then we go through the end of December will be the next period that people will be looking at with the filing starting the following January 2025. So ongoing process, needed to be ongoing so that we can make sure we keep it all together. But again, getting better, hopefully, as we go. So thanks for joining me today. If you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button and ring the bell, and you'll be notified whenever I'm live. And I try to provide good information. If you are a broadband service provider or a state that's going to be doing BEAD funding, we provide a lot of information about that. Can help you out. So make sure you subscribe, click the bell, and you'll be notified when I'm live. If you like this video, if you give me a like on it, thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care.